Hello folks, I'm Headley, just another fat bearded man talking about records. What you saw the clip of was the Sambroso Allstars, a Cuban band who I saw in York last year in October. That's a clip I took of them playing a song called Chan Chan, which became famous when it was the opening track on the Buena Vista Social Club album. Going to see them sort of rekindled my love affair of Cuban music and the Buena Vista Social Club family of albums, and I thought I'd perhaps kind of run through them today, have a look at the records that were released kind of under the Buena Vista Social Club label, I suppose you could call it, on World Circuit Records, but also widen it out and some of the artists and the records they produced outside of that label. So the Buena Vista Social Club project was put together by Nick Gold, who was the CEO and producer at World Circuit Records, who was a great lover of Cuban music. But he'd become interested in Cuban music mainly through his interest in African music, and he'd been out in Mali recording artists there, and he discovered that they were influenced and had a love of music from Cuba, and so he came up with this idea of blending the two things together, so doing a kind of a fusion album of artists from Africa, from Mali, and getting them to record with musicians from Cuba. So he set up a recording sessions for 2 weeks in Havana at the Egram Studios. I'm not quite sure how to. Egram is an acronym, and it means this. I'm not going to say it. But the old Panart Studios in Havana, and he had been in contact with a guy called Juan de Marcos Gonzalez, who was a player, a musician, and a tres player. Tres is a type of guitar in a group called Sierra Maestra. And they, if you listen to Sierra Maestra, they are a kind of a version of the Buena Vista Social Club. They're playing that old time, sort of 1920s to 30s Cuban music. Now, basically, a lot of the stuff that gets played in the West, because I mean it's in the West, isn't it? I mean you can't get more West really, but well, I suppose you can. How far west do you go until you come around the other way? Anyway, I'm going off on a tangent. Sorry. So yeah, most people think of this music as salsa music, but it's not a term that's really used in Cuba, because salsa is a sort of a term that kind of puts together a lot of different styles of music. I have to say, and I apologise to anyone that is Cuban or watching this, or if anyone is a big fan of Cuban music, because while I love it, I'm not that au fait with Cuban music and the history of it. I am trying to learn, because I'm reading a book called Cuba and Its Music by Ned Sublet, which is great, but I'm about a third of the way through, and we're not even into the 20th century. So it's a very deep dive into the history of the music of Cuba, the history of slavery, and the effect that had on the music and where it came from. So if you're at all interested in the music of Cuba, have a read of that. It's fascinating stuff. So yeah, Juan de Marcos Gonzalez always wanted to record an album with veteran musicians. He'd grown up with his father playing with these artists, and he was used to a lot of them coming around to his house. They were friends of his parents, and so he grew up around a lot of these people, which is the main reason that they were able to find all of these veteran artists. Now, it should be pointed out that actually there's a mythology that's sort of surrounding the Buena Vista Social Club record, about how these people were pulled from obscurity. Now, that's not true. For some of the artists, there is something in that. For a lot of the artists, that's poppycock. So, for example, Omara Portuondo, who sings one of the songs on it, only sings on one song because she was rushing off on a tour to Vietnam. So she was touring, you know, communist countries, of course. Compay Segundo, who's also on the album, he just signed a new record contract with Warner Brothers. So these were people that were performing and were well known, even outside of Cuba. But there were some other artists that were kind of rediscovered and got a second sort of go at things later in life. This idea, though, to record. So the idea was to record an album with Juan de Marcos Gonzalez, which would become the Afro-Cuban Allstars' first album, and also to record this fusion album of Malian singers and performers with the Cuban artists. Now, unfortunately, what happened was the Malian musicians, there was a hold up with their visas and they couldn't make it. So it meant that Nick Gold had to really think long and hard about what they were going to do. Anyway, he got in touch with Ry Cooder, who he'd worked with previously. He'd worked with him on the Talking Timbuktu album with Ali Farka Touré. And so he said, hey, come on over. I know you have an interest in Cuban music. Let's see what we can put together while we're out there. So the Buena Vista Social Club album, which has sold 12 million copies, in excess of 12 million, is kind of a mistake, an accident, a happy mistake. So this was all organised. They came over. They recorded they recorded 3 albums in that 2-week session. The first being, as I mentioned, the Afro-Cuban Allstars. This is A Toda Cuba La Gusta, which means everyone in Cuba loves it. And so this is that recreation of 1950s kind of Havana nightlife. It's the son conjunto. That's what it is. Type of music, which was the sort of thing that you would hear if you went into nightclubs in Havana. It's upbeat and danceable. So there we've got them rehearsing or something. So you've got that's Juan de Marcos Gonzalez there. He always wears that little sort of beret, and that's him playing a trez. Now, the thing is that some of the stories they tell about the Buena Vista Social Club album, I don't really kind of understand the timeline, mainly because they talk about discovering Ibrahim Ferrer to go on because Ry Cooder said, do we have a different type of singer? But he was already involved in the Afro-Cuban Allstars album. I mean, Ry Cooder is on this, actually. He guests on, I think, one track, actually. So he did do something on this one. So you've got Ibrahim Ferrer here, who is the one that they talk about kind of going and finding, who had been retired for a number of years. So you've also got Cachaito Lopez here, he's the bass player, and then there's Guajiro Mirabal, who's the trumpet player there. I'm not sure who the other guys at the back are, but if you like the Buena Vista Social Club album and you haven't heard the Afro-Cuban Allstars first album, check it out because it is cracking. So that was recorded. It's that danceable 1950s Havana sound, quite a large group, lots of trumpets and backing. Then we get to the main deal. This is the Buena Vista Social Club album. There's Ibrahim Ferrer again. Apparently that's a picture of him walking to the recording studios on the second day of recording. So this was this sort of idea of putting things together. So it has that son conjunto sound, but also it brings in the Guajiro sound, which is the sort of country element, which is a far more relaxed, mellower sound, and it kind of integrates the two. You get the two together, which is why it sounds so unique. I think is it does have the kind of the Havana nightclub sound, but it's also got that sort of rural kind of Cuban folk music almost, sort of mainly played by Compay Segundo and what's his name, Eliades Ochoa, who's known as the Cuban Johnny Cash, a kind of a country performer. So yeah, so this is a mellow kind of version of the Afro-Cuban All-Stars with a more acoustic and sort of yeah, you get more boleros on here, and of course the couple of classic tunes, Dos Gardenias, that Ibrahim Ferrer sings, and then you've also got which is the song that Omara Portuondo sings? I can't remember, but yeah. So this is actually the 25th anniversary release, which has 5 extra tracks. There is another version which has more tracks, which is like done as a book, but the extra tracks are only on CD, and basically the album is, you're just getting this. So I'm quite happy to have this copy, and if I want to listen to the extra tracks, I will listen to them online and stream them, because they're not songs that necessarily should be heard. They're kind of throwaway little bits. Anyway, so yeah, so let's go through who we've got. We've got Ruben Gonzalez playing piano. Now he's the guy that had not been playing. He was in his late 80s at this point. He didn't have a piano. He hadn't played for years, and so he was given the opportunity to come back. You've got Manuel Guajiro Mirabal, who's on trumpet. You've got Orlando Cachaito Lopez on bass, who I showed. Compay Segundo on guitar and vocals. Barbarita Torres, who plays the lute, which is a type of lute, Cuban lute. As I mentioned, Eliades Ochoa on guitar and vocals. Omara Portuondo, 1 track. You feel that she's a bigger part of this because she went on the tour with them afterwards, but she's only on 1 track. Like I said, she was disappearing off. She happened to be at the Egram Studios, and they persuaded her to sing. They were trying to get, I think it's Celia Gonzalez. I do have an album by Celia Gonzalez. Is that who it is? Am I thinking of? Yes, they are. Celia Gonzalez. They asked her to be in it because that was an album. That was an artist that Nick Gold was familiar with. I think he executive produced that album. I.e., it was originally from the 80s, but they kind of re-released it on World Circuit. But apparently they went to Celia and said, "Would you be in this project?" And she said, "I'll have to check the bones." And she's one of the many people in Cuba who are into the sort of Yoruba religion and this mixture of kind of almost voodoo and Christianity. And so she kind of threw the bones to see if the bones said she should be involved in the project. Apparently the bones said no. So she didn't turn up. So she could have been involved in it, which unfortunately she wasn't. Anyway, so Ibrahim Ferrer, as I mentioned. You've got Manuel Puntalita Lycia. That's him there on the back of that album. And finally, Pio Leva, and they were both on vocals. So they're all on this. They were all people from the sort of 50s and 60s, were well known in Cuba. So yeah, I mean, I don't really need to say much about the Buena Vista Social Club. Every coffee table in the country has that, and every Guardian reader owns it. So they recorded those 2 albums, but they had a little bit of time spare, and they recorded this, which is introducing Ruben Gonzalez, here, the piano player. Fabulous guy. I like the quote on here from Ray Kuda. He calls him the greatest piano soloist I've ever heard in my life. A Cuban cross between Thelonious Monk and Felix the Cat. So at the beginning of every session when they opened up, Ruben Gonzalez would be there waiting at the door, and they'd open the door and he would rush in and go to the piano and start playing before the sessions. And then when they finished the sessions, he would go to the piano and he would play the piano until they locked up and went. So basically, they picked up on the fact that he was an absolutely incredible player, and decided with the 2 days left that they should record him. And so it's a small group. It's got Orlando Cachaito Lopez on bass, and Guajiro Mirabal on trumpet, and other percussionists. So that's basically all it is, and it's fabulous. If you like your jazz, this has a very jazzy element to it. Cuban music and jazz are connected. Not that Cuban music and jazz, they're not evolutionary wise. Cuban music and jazz are like chimpanzees and humans. We didn't develop from the chimpanzee. We both developed from a similar missing link, and that's kind of like Cuban music and jazz. But of course, then jazz becomes an influence on Cuban music, and Cuban music becomes an influence on jazz. So yeah, this is for the jazzers out there. You should all have this. This is a fabulous record. Okay, so before moving on to some of the solo artists, I'll just show 3 records that were released under the Buena Vista Social Club name. That's the Live at Carnegie Hall, recorded in July 1998. So this is from, if you've seen the film of the Buena Vista Social Club, it all sort of culminates with this concert. It wasn't the first concert. I think the first concert they did was in Amsterdam, but this is like the second or third that they had done. But yeah, absolutely fabulous performance. Great. There they are. That's fabulous. Yeah, so this was released in 2008, quite a long time after the original album. But it's basically tracks from the Buena Vista Social Club album, a couple of extras, and some tracks that were done on some of the solo albums. For example, the duet Silencio, which was done on the Ibrahim Ferrer's first album, which is a duet between him and Omara Portuondo, which is beautiful, and they perform it beautifully here. So yeah, that's really worth getting. It sounds great. In live performance, they really come alive, I think. Then when was this? This was released in 2015, so 10 years ago. This is Lost and Found, which is kind of putting itself forward as kind of a lost and found Buena Vista Social Club album. It's a little bit of a lie. I mean, only insofar as you can call everything with all the artists Buena Vista Social Club. It has a 2 or 3 tracks that were originally released or were recorded at the original sessions. There's a beautiful song that Omara Portuondo sings that I can't believe wasn't on the original. But otherwise, it's also got tracks from that were recorded during sessions for for solo albums. So you've got a track from Omara Portuondo that was recorded for her second album. Cachaito Lopez, a tune by him that was recorded for his solo album. Also Guajiro Mirabal, the trumpet player, there's a track that was recorded for his solo album. And also a couple of tracks from an album that was never finished by the trombonist Jesus Ramos. I don't know why it wasn't finished. Maybe it was, I don't know. I don't know why it wasn't finished. I'm not going to speculate. But yeah, a couple of great tracks from that. So it's a kind of an odds and sods and a couple of live performances. The tracks with Ibrahim Ferrer are live performances. But, you know, if you like the Buena Vista Social Club, I mean, yeah, it's worth getting. I wouldn't say it is get it over some of the solo albums, but it's certainly, if you've got all of those, it's worth getting. And finally, there's an EP. This was, I think, it was a Record Store Day release originally. So this is from 2022 was released, and I think they've really dredged the bottom of the barrel. I mean, not that the music isn't good, it is. One of the tracks was recorded that hasn't appeared before. Other tracks there's a monitor mix of Chan Chan and an alternate take. So yeah, I mean, if you can get it cheap, you know, it's worth having. But it's just for a completist like me. Well, I'm not that much for completists because there are missing records in my collection, but yeah, it is what it is. It's an EP of 4 songs, 2 of which you already know and have elsewhere as different versions. But yeah.
Tú me quisiste, Macusa, y yo también te adoré, con tanta ilusión te quise que nunca de ti dudé. Poquito de tiempo que de ti me separé, me traicionaste, Macusa, qué triste yo me quedé.
So as well as the Buena Vista Social Club having continued releases, so did the Afro-Cuban Allstars. So quite quickly, in 1999, the second album by the Afro-Cuban Allstars, what's it called? Distinto Diferente, which means different directions, which is kind of what it is. It's not as it's a bit forward-looking, far more forward-looking than the original album. It's got some young artists as well that have been brought in, as well as having all the original people. You know, you've got Ibrahim Ferrer, Ruben Gonzalez, Pantalita, Barbarita Torres, Omara Portuondo, Cachaito Lopez, Guajiro, Mirabal. So they're all on here as well, but there are young artists as well. You'll find with a lot of the second albums by artists or groups in the stable are a bit more experimental. They're a bit different. They're trying something new. They're not just simply being a sort of a recreation of the past. They're far more progressive and have guests and different things on them. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But anyway, so there's that one. That was released on World Circuit. That was the last one that released on World Circuit. There was another one released, I'm not sure, 2025, I think. So this is called Step Forward, and it doesn't have any of the original All-Stars on, apart from Juan de Marcos Gonzalez. But you know, they're worth listening to. And then I think there is a live one, but this is the last one. Technically speaking, it's a Felix Baloy album, but with the Afro-Cuban All-Stars present. So he's been on some of the other albums earlier. He's a vocalist, a beautiful vocalist. But yeah, I mean, they're worth having, but they're certainly not essential records. Those last couple of Afro-Cuban All-Stars. Like I said, I think there's a live one that I don't have. But yeah, none of them released on vinyl. The next artist that they went back to record was Ibrahim Ferrer. And this is Buena Vista Social Club presents Ibrahim Ferrer. This was released in 1999 from a March 98 session. So they went back across. Now, if you've seen the film, I said film quite aggressively, didn't I? Film! Sorry, I didn't need to do it a second time. Yeah, if you've seen the movie, the Buena Vista Social Club, Wim Wenders, which I have got here. I was going to show it later, but I've only got a copy that came free with The Guardian. But yeah, essential viewing. All the recording studio sessions you see are from the recording of this. So there was no official recording of anything at the original sessions. In fact, a lot of the photographs that you do see recreated on the album sleeve and in the gatefold are really grainy because they weren't professionally taken. They didn't think it was going to be such a big thing, but of course by the time that they record this, they know that they've got a hit on their hands. So yeah, so this was fabulous. Oh, look at that beautiful picture of Ibrahim Ferrer and Omara Portuondo singing Silencio. Oh, beautiful stuff. That's chills go down your spine when you watch them perform that. But yeah, I mean, it's all the same people. It's as recommended as the original Buena Vista Social Club. In fact, many of these satellite releases, I think, are as important to have. So that's beautiful record, wonderful stuff. As I said with second albums, they often go different directions. This is Buenos Humanos, which was when was this released? I have got a list of these sort of things. Oh no, have I left it off my list? Never mind. This is 2003, but I don't think that was when it was. It could be 2003 when it was released. Yeah. So this is the second album by Ibrahim Ferrer, and it goes in some slightly different directions, some more modern sounds, different stuff going on. There is also a remixed or sort of remastered version, which is a double. Oh, that's a double. No, that's a single. This is a double album. Actually, there's somebody I haven't mentioned. That's Manuel Galban there, who I haven't mentioned, strangely, because I will be coming to him in a bit. Yeah, this has got, I think, 4 extra tracks, and it's got different order. But, I mean, did it need remastering? Did they not get it right the first time? Probably. Anyway, so I should really get rid of the original copy. But so yeah, those are 2 copies of his second album, Buenos Humanos. And then finally, this was actually released posthumously after he died. This is Mi Sueño. And this is him basically doing boleros, which are very sort of slow love songs. Interestingly, when Ibrahim Ferrer was playing with the bands in the sort of 50s and 60s, or singing with them, certainly with Benny Moré, he was the guy that they brought out to sing the upbeat dancing songs. And he never got the opportunity to sing boleros and love songs and quiet ones, which is ironic because that's what he seems to excel at. And this album is beautiful, absolutely lovely. It's lush, it's orchestrated, it's beautiful, relaxed and romantic. Yeah, it's even got my favourite song, Perfidia. I love Perfidia. I'm a sucker for any version of that, even if it's easy listening or anything. I just love the tune. So yeah, yeah, if you like that sort of romantic, relaxed, lush sounding love songs, that's a beautiful record.
Vete por favor, no me atormentes, grábate en tu mente nuestra despedida, ya no queda nada de la cita aquella.
In a similar kind of vein to that sort of bolero style singing is Omara Portuondo's first album. It's just called Buena Vista Social Club Presents. Absolutely fabulous record. Now this is a lush, romantic sounding, oh, doesn't she look fabulous, album. Mainly because of the strings arranged by Demetrio Munez, which are absolutely fabulous. Beautiful sounding record. If you haven't heard this one, you really should. Late night, romantic, lush, beautiful stuff. Definitely up there with any of the Buena Vista Social Club. I mean, in fact, this, between you and me, this might be my favourite of all the Buena Vista Social Club albums. But yeah, absolutely fabulous. She did do a second album on a world circuit. What's it called? Flor de Amor, The Flower of Love. This was only ever released on CD, unfortunately. But yeah, again, this one has far more sort of Brazilian sounds in it. And like I said, second albums tend to go away from the norm and try to do something different. And her second album has much more Brazilian sort of rhythms and styles going on.
Si tierra mía, dime qué has hecho de nuestro dulce hogar. Reina que un día fue la alegría de todo aquel sitial. Lágrimas vierte la sitiería que tiende a desolar.
Right, I'm going to show some stuff that I only have on CD. Some have been released on vinyl, which I don't have, but the vast majority have not been, unfortunately. That is the second album by Ruben Gonzalez, Chanchulo. This was released in 2000. And this was the last album he recorded before he unfortunately died. Much like I said about a lot of these second albums, they're more progressive than the first, less traditional than the first ones they recorded. So while you have Ibrahim Ferrer singing on here, you've got Cachaito Lopez and Guajiro Mirabal, Eliades Ochoa, and you've even got Rai Kuda turning up on this, playing the Trez. You've also got African artist Chiclo on here as well. So, yeah, a bit more of a fusion going on some of the tracks. But, yeah, really worth listening to. If you like his first album, you're bound to like this. Some people say it's better. It's apparently the first album he released was sort of it doesn't make... Apparently, all the songs are kind of a bit hackneyed and well-known for people in Cuba. Obviously, for most of us who aren't familiar with all the classics, as it were, yeah, that goes over our heads. But this is a bit more progressive. But it's still that sort of jazz piano Cuban style from Ruben Gonzalez. Talking about jazz, we've got the album by Orlando Cachaito Lopez, who's the bass player. Now, this is available on vinyl. It wasn't released on vinyl, and like some of these that weren't actually released on vinyl at the time, they only came out on CD. They've subsequently been released, reissued. This is one that I've not managed to get hold of, and now it goes for over £100. So yeah, if I ever find that, I'll be really happy. Yeah, so Cachaito means it's the diminutive of cacho. So he's from a family of bass players. I think there's an interview with him, and he talks about there being something like 20 bass players in his family. But yeah, his father played was a musician, Orestes Lopez, and his uncle, the famous Israel Cacho Lopez. So who basically between them they invented the mambo, apparently. So Cacho is a huge name in Cuban music, and so he gets called Little Cacho, Cachaito. Anyway, there's a little bit of background. So yeah, this is the most jazz album of perhaps all of them, which is probably why it's very hard to find on record. All the jazzers have gone and got it. But again, it's very progressive, actually, this. There's a track on here called Cachaito in Laboratory, which is kind of like break beats and hip hop. They bring in a DJ Nasty, I think, a French DJ. And yeah, it's crazy, man. But yeah, so there's traditional stuff, but then equally it goes out there on some of it, which is absolutely fascinating to hear. And it all fits in. It sounds great. His bass just runs through the whole thing, and it sounds absolutely fabulous. So yeah, that's worth getting. If you ever find the vinyl, buy it. Well, if it's less than £100, let me know. But hopefully I'll find it one day. It might be released again. I don't know. So another one. Now this isn't released on vinyl, and it should be. Now this is a record, an album that really should be better known. This is the album by Manuel Guajiro Mirabal. Now I keep saying Guajiro. Now Guajiro is his nickname. They all seem to have nicknames, don't they? Everyone has a nickname. But Guajiro basically means country boy, peasant, hick, redneck, but it doesn't have any of the negative connotations that it has elsewhere in the world. They're quite happy to call themselves Guajiro. It's a sort of shows where they've come from the country. But yeah, so that's his nickname, Guajiro. And he's the trumpet player, and this is a fabulous album. Produced by Nick Gold, recorded and mixed by Jerry Boys. I haven't mentioned Jerry Boys, and I should have done. There are 4 people that are important in the Buena Vista Social Club: Nick Gold, Rai Kuda, Jean de Marcos Gonzalez, and Jerry Boys. Jerry Boys is the engineer, and he has been an engineer for donkey's years. He cut his teeth as a boy at Abbey Road. I think he was involved in something with some of the Beatles stuff. And he did a lot of production work and engineering work for Island, a lot of the folk stuff. I believe Nick Drake, he's on there, engineering. Martin Carthy, definitely, Fairport. So go and look up his discography of production and engineering. He's done everything. Anyway, he's the one that mic'd up the studio, the Egram Studios in Havana, because they do an ambient miking. So it's while there is close miking going on, there's also the sound of the studio being recorded at the same time, and they're blending it together, which gives it that incredible sound. So Jerry Boys deserves as much kudos as the rest of the people involved, really. But anyway, yeah, so yeah, you've got all the usual people on here. I think this is an album of songs that were either written or made famous by Arsenio Rodriguez, who I will come to in another follow-up video about Cuban music, away from the Buena Vista Social Club. But yeah, so everything's sort of but this is fabulous. You know, it's got it's got Cachaito Lopez on here, Manuel Galban playing guitar. Ibrahim Ferrer is singing on this. So yeah, if you like, it's in many ways I would call this the second Buena Vista Social Club album, but it doesn't get the love it should have. So yeah, Guajira, absolutely fabulous. Now, I haven't actually mentioned this guy. This is what's his name? He's called Miguel Diaz, known as Anga. Miguel Anga Diaz. Now he's a conga player, Congolese? No, a Congo. I don't know what they call them. Basically, he's a conga player, percussionist. Now he's one of the youngest people that was. He's not on the Buena Vista Social Club album. He is on the first Afro-Cuban Allstars album, and he was only 40 when he died, so sadly taken from us far too soon. And this is an incredible record, album. It is quite out there, much like the Cachaito Lopez track with the hip hop artists and backing and DJ and scratching. This really takes a lot of that. It's got that what's his name? I got it on here. Must be on here. DJ D Nasty, is it? Anyway, but you've also got Ruben Gonzalez on here, Cachaito Lopez. Yeah, there's some trippy stuff. If you listen to anything, listen to the version of where is it? Oh, I Love Supreme. It took me ages. That was really bad. I almost had a breakdown there. Yeah, Love Supreme. The version on here, absolutely amazing. But yeah, sadly, no longer with, well, like most of these, but sadly he was got taken too soon. Miguel Diaz, or Anga as he's known. Fabulous record. I've mentioned Manuel Galban a couple of times. This is the album he released with Rai Kuda, Shiny. What's it called? It's called Mambo Sinendo. Now, Manuel Galban was in a band called Zafiros, the Sapphires, which were kind of a doo-woppy kind of beat version in the sort of the 60s. And so he's got a kind of a twangy guitar style, and this is available on vinyl. Again, it's another record that is really expensive these days. I think it's because it's shiny. People like shiny things. They're sort of magpies. They're attracted to them. The CD's still shiny. Look at it shining. But yeah, this is a sort of a duet album between Rai Kuda and Manuel Galban. It's great. I mean, there's sort of famous tracks like Patricia, which is a Perez Prado tune. There is actually a song on here which was originally done by Zafiros. Is it Los Zafiros? Yeah. I know this is one that's done very well, mainly because I suppose it's Rai Kuda's involvement. But yeah, cracking stuff, mostly instrumental. I think there might be some vocals on it, but not much. But yeah, fabulous sort of twangy, sort of atmospheric, Cuban influenced Americana almost. So yeah. So not on World Circuit. So Manuel Galban, this is Blue Cha Cha. So this was released in 2012, and I think this was just released before he died. And this has various people on it. I think Omara Portuondo turns up on it. But it's far more progressive. It's all over the shop. It's got a bit of rock and roll. It's got a bit of sort of twangy, almost Ennio Morricone type stuff on here. But yeah, really worth listening to. But it is a bit bluesy in places. But it still sticks to some of the sort of tunes like the rumbas and things like that. But yeah. And then there is the Zafiros. That's put out by World Circuit, because it's almost impossible to get the certainly in the UK Los Zafiros albums. You know, they were all released in Cuba, but this is the nice compilation that was put out on World Circuit in 1999. And if you like, in fact, there's a track on here, Bossa Cubana. It was used on, was it Breaking Bad, I think, and so it got them a bit of attention. But yeah, there's Manuel Galban. Now, I've always thought, if you look at pictures of Los Zafiros, he always looks the geekiest, which ironically, by the time he gets to the Buena Vista Social Club, he is the coolest looking dude in the world. To Eliades Ochoa. That's an album. It was released just after the Buena Vista Social Club, 1999. Again, this is a promo actually. Not released on vinyl, unfortunately. It has got a track, Pinte los Labios Maria, which became a huge hit in Cuba because it had a kind of a cartoon video. It sort of went viral. Would it have gone viral in 1999? Maybe not. It was probably played on their on the TV channels, but that's a fabulous record. Sublime Illusion. And then there are some of his I've got on vinyl. These were back on World Circuit. So this is Vamos a Bailar un Son. It's that sort of, as you say, he wears a cowboy hat. It's that kind of rootsy, folky side of Cuban music. So that's really that's a double album, actually, that one. Really worth checking out. And then a more recent one. This is from 2023, I believe. Which is a bit odd, this one. This has got, well, it's not odd at all, but it's got collaborations with, it's got vocals, a duet with Jonah's Policewoman, who you really wouldn't expect to find. Ruben Blades turns up on here, and Charlie Musselwhite does some sort of blues harmonica duet with him as well. I'm not really into blues or the harmonica blues, but it really kind of works on this. So what's this one called? This is called Guajiro. There we are with that word again. I think that was his nickname, but you couldn't have two people in the Buena Vista Social Club both called Guajiro. But yeah, though, if you like that sort of rootsy country kind of Cuban stuff, they are really good.
María era muy graciosita y ahora que ya no se pinta, ya no luce tan bonita María. Píntame los labios María, píntame. Píntame los labios María, píntame.
Compay Segundo, real name, this, because I ain't pronouncing that. It's a nickname, Compay Segundo. He was in a group, a duet called Los Compadres, that I think started certainly in the 40s, if not in the late 30s. But basically, there was two of them. One of them was called Compay Primo, as in number one, first, and he was known as Compay Segundo. And it's also become the sort of voices. So he would be a backing singing voice, like singing the harmonies. So that's where his name Compay Segundo comes from. So this is an album that was actually recorded prior to the Buena Vista Social Club album, which is funny because it starts with Chan Chan, just as the Buena Vista Social Club album does. Apparently, so yeah, this is on Warner, and he'd just signed to Warner. I don't know if this was the first album he'd done, but when he went into the studio for the Buena Vista Social Club, he was very, very reticent to sing. He said, "I've just signed a new contract with Warner Brothers. I'm really worried of breaching that contract and losing it." So they checked with Warner Brothers. Warner Brothers went, "Go ahead, it's fine. We'll okay that. That's fine." They told Compay Segundo that, and he just wouldn't believe it. So if you listen to the album, you can hear him there, but he's kind of in the background. But when you see the footage and listen to the concert from Carnegie Hall, he's up front. He's there. I mean, he's a big character. If you've seen the film, he's a big name in it. So yeah, brilliant stuff. Wonderful. Relaxed kind of... yeah, again, it's all over the... It's doing sons and boleros, so that's a fabulous record to check out. This one's great. It's also got... This is Kale Suld. I don't know how you pronounce that, sorry. This is from 1999. This is nice because it's got some... it sort of changes things up a bit. It brings in some clarinets that accompany. But as you see, it's also got a version of Chan Chan. Yeah, has to do it on everything. So that's nice. I've got one on CD as well. You know, if you like one Compay Segundo album, you're going to like them all. They're all much similar style. It's like there's a style called Trover, which I think is what it is. I couldn't describe it, but I understand that's going on here. And then I have a duet album that was released more recently, which again has Chan Chan on it with Eliades Ochoa, but it's got some interesting duets on here with Cesaria Evora, who's from Cape Verde. You've got Pio Leiva on here, who sang with the Buena Vista Social Club. You've got Antonio Banderas on here, and Omara Portuondo, and even Charles Aznavour. So it's a bit of everything on there. Now I got a copy of this for my sister, who's a big fan of sort of Cuban music, and unfortunately, she's got a Lynn Sundek turntable, which doesn't have 45 RPM, which this is 45 RPM, and she can't play it. So that was gutting. Anyway, so yeah. Great records by Compay Segundo.
Se prepara la equipona para dar comienzo a la obra. Se prepara la equipona para dar comienzo a la obra. Suya bota furulele, emprenda de...
Just a couple of things to sort of finish up with. Album by Pio Leiva. He's got a very declamatory voice, very rough. If you listen to the Buena Vista Social Club and you hear a kind of a rough voice, that'll probably be him. So this was released in it's not going to tell me, but yeah, this is post Buena Vista Social Club, whereas this collection I've got of his is stuff recorded much earlier. This is the problem with some of the early stuff. You know, people were trying to kind of make some money on the back of all of this, and so releasing old stuff, but often they're not saying where it's come from. I've got an album by Puntalita, Manuel Galban, or known as Puntalita. And so, yeah, that's mostly old stuff. This was actually released after he died. He died in 2000. So this is a collection of older recordings. I've got a couple of albums by Barbarito Torres. He's the lute player, the kind of lute player. This one was recorded just after the Buena Vista Social Club, 1999. And it's got people on there. It's got Omara Portuondo, various other players on it. And then another one by him as well. There he is. Good tash. He's got a great tash. There's Barbarito Torres. But yeah, those are great. If it's kind of that mandolin style lute playing that sort of leads. Again, you've got various people on here like Omara Portuondo singing. So there you go. If you haven't seen the film, watch the film. It's great. Wim Wenders' film. It's has to be watched. Not as important to watch is this film, which is called Goodbye or Buena Vista Social Club Adios, which in some ways is a better film. So if you're wanting to find out a bit about the history of Cuba and its music, this does go into that. Sadly, what this does is it kind of takes the people to their, obviously it follows Ibrahim Ferrer and people, and you see him on stage when he's really not capable. which isn't nice to see. And then, of course, you have them dying and it reflecting on that. So whereas the original Buena Vista Social Club film has them kind of frozen in amber, a bit like the end of Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, they'll be forever running out of that door with their guns in their hand, frozen in time, and that's like the Buena Vista Social Club on there. This is not; it's far sadder ending, but it's worth watching if you want to know a bit more of the history. So there you go. I'm sorry that got a bit rambling. No, I've got one more thing to show, and this kind of wraps everything up. And this is an album called Afro-Cubism. So this, which was released in 2010, this is available on vinyl, but again, it's very expensive these days. But this is the album that is the blend of Malian music from Africa and Cuban music. This is this fusion that originally they went across to Cuba to record. So in 2010, Nick Gold finally produces that fusion record. So you have Toumani Diabate, the kora player, and you have Eliades Ochoa on here, and it's a fabulous record. It reminds me a bit, if anyone's familiar with the Songhai record, which is, again, it's that sort of flamenco and African rhythms together. It reminds me very much of that. But yeah, worth finding or having a listen to. So it kind of ties everything up, really. This is kind of the end of the Buena Vista Social Club in sort of finally getting to do what they set out to do. But the journey to get there was pretty special. So I'm sorry I've rambled a bit. If anyone made it this far, thank you. If anyone is totally infuriated by my pronunciation and my lack of knowledge, I do apologise. I'm just a fan of the music, and I kind of want to, evangelise about it. So, yeah, I'm going to come back with another rambling video about older Cuban music, but until I'm back and manage to build up the courage to do that, I'll be back soon. So how do I normally finish? Oh yeah, bye bye for now. Why do I always do that?